So here's something that blew my mind when I first found out about it. You know how planes fly over the North Pole all the time, right? Like there are actual passenger routes that go straight over the Arctic, connecting America to Asia, saving hours of flight time. Totally normal, happens every day. But the South Pole, Antarctica, that's a completely different story. And honestly, when you dig into the reasons why, it gets way more interesting than you'd expect. So let's break it down. The first reason is the weather. And I mean, seriously, extreme weather. We're not talking about, oh, it's a bit chilly, bring a jacket kind of cold. We're talking temperatures that drop down to minus 90 degrees Celsius. Minus 90. To put that in perspective, your freezer at home runs at around minus 20. Now imagine 4.5 times colder than that. That's what we're dealing with in Antarctica. And here's the thing, the scientists who actually go there, the few brave souls who work on research stations on that continent, they have to go through a full month of special training just to survive in those conditions. A whole month before they even set foot on the ice. Now think about what that means for an aircraft. You've probably seen it before. When it's cold at an airport, the ground crew sprays that greenish liquid all over the wings before takeoff. That's de-icing fluid. It stops ice from forming on the surfaces of the plane. And the colder it gets, the more of that stuff you need. The more you need, the more it costs. Now try to imagine how much de-icing fluid you'd need to safely operate a plane over the coldest place on Earth. We're talking absolutely insane quantities. And that's before you even consider the other problems. Because the cold isn't the only issue. Not even close. The second reason is visibility, or more accurately, the total lack of it. There's a phenomenon in Antarctica called a whiteout, and I want you to really picture this because it's genuinely terrifying if you think about it from a pilot's perspective. Imagine looking out the window of a cockpit and seeing nothing. Not darkness, not fog, just white. Everywhere. The sky is white, the ground is white. The horizon has completely disappeared. You literally cannot tell where the ground ends and the sky begins. For a pilot, that is a nightmare scenario. Your whole job depends on knowing your orientation, where you are, which way is up, how far you are from the ground. In a whiteout, all of that information just vanishes. And it's not like you can just rely on your instruments and push through. Because on top of the whiteout, you've got storms in Antarctica that are genuinely violent. Winds that reach record speeds, turbulence that would shake even the biggest aircraft like a toy. Put those two things together and zero visibility and hurricane-force storms. And you've got conditions that make flying not just difficult, but genuinely life-threatening. The third reason is infrastructure, and the complete absence of it. Here's something most people don't think about. A plane doesn't just need an engine and wings to fly safely. It needs a whole support system on the ground. Air traffic controllers watching its position at all times, warning pilots about incoming storms, guiding them along their route. Emergency airstrips scattered along the flight path in case something goes wrong mechanically. Flying over Antarctica is a bit like flying over an ocean, except worse. At least over an ocean you have decent visibility and a fighting chance. But if something goes wrong over Antarctica, engine failure, a sudden medical emergency, anything, there is literally nowhere to land. Zero options. You're on your own over a frozen wasteland the size of a continent. This is exactly why the Arctic is different. When planes fly over the North Pole, they're always within range of ground controllers. There are airports nearby that can serve as emergency landing points. The whole system that keeps air travel safe, it exists up there. Down in Antarctica, it simply doesn't. And the fourth reason is navigation itself. The magnetic field near the South Pole is, let's call it, unpredictable. Aircraft navigation systems rely heavily on magnetic data. And in Antarctica, that data gets distorted in ways that can seriously mess with onboard instruments. When your instruments start giving you bad information and you've got no ground controllers to cross-reference with and you can't see anything out the window, that's a combination that no pilot wants to face. All four of these reasons stack on top of each other And what you get is a continent that remains, to this day, essentially a no-fly zone. Not because of some secret law or conspiracy, just because it's genuinely one of the most hostile environments on the planet for aviation. Alright, so now that we know why planes don't fly over Antarctica, let's talk about what's actually down there. Because this is where things get really interesting. Looking at Antarctica from above, it just looks like an endless, flat, white nothingness. Billions of tons of ice stretching as far as the eye can see. But scientists have been using radar technology to look beneath that ice. And what they've found is genuinely mind-blowing. 400 lakes, liquid water sitting underneath several kilometers of ice, completely cut off from the surface. Some of these lakes are enormous. Lake Vostok, the largest one, is roughly the size of Lake Ontario, and they've been there, sealed off from the rest of the world, for potentially millions of years. Now here's where your brain might start to hurt a little. Scientists have found that these lakes aren't empty. They contain living organisms, microbes that have somehow survived in complete darkness, under crushing pressure, with no sunlight and almost no nutrients, for millions of years. They've evolved in total isolation, developing survival strategies that we're only beginning to understand. Why does this matter? Because if life can thrive in conditions that extreme right here on Earth, it opens up some very big questions about life elsewhere in the solar system. Moons like Europa, Jupiter's icy moon, have similar conditions beneath their frozen surfaces. Antarctica might literally be giving us a preview of what alien life could look like. I know that name sounds like something from a horror movie, but stay with me because the explanation is actually fascinating. Over 100 years ago, explorers in Antarctica discovered a waterfall flowing out of a glacier, and the water was bright red, deep, vivid, unmistakably red, like blood. Understandably, that freaked people out for a while. The first theory was that it was caused by red algae in the water. Reasonable guess, wrong answer. What scientists eventually discovered was that beneath the glacier sits an ancient lake, and in that lake live microorganisms that have, over millions of years, converted the water into a solution saturated with iron oxide. That's rust, essentially. Highly concentrated rust water. When that water slowly seeps through tiny cracks in the glacier and pours out the other side, it hits the oxygen in the air, oxidizes instantly, and turns that vivid deep red color. Nature came up with something that looks like a special effect in a blockbuster film, and the explanation is even stranger than the appearance. I know, a continent covered in ice, with volcanoes, but yes, it's real. The most famous one is Mount Erebus, which holds the title of the southernmost active volcano on the planet. Scientists have been monitoring it for about 50 years now. Inside Erebus's crater, there are actual lava lakes, pools of molten rock sitting open to the Antarctic sky. The volcano sits on the intersection of several tectonic fault lines, which makes it one of the most geologically active spots on the continent. Every so often, it throws out massive bursts of deep earth gases from these fault lines. Because of the extreme conditions and the sheer remoteness of the location, scientists can't visit very often. But during the rare expeditions that have made it there, researchers found something unexpected: living organisms inside the volcano itself. Life, surviving in the heat, the toxic gases, and the darkness inside an active volcano on the coldest continent on Earth. At this point, it's almost like Antarctica is showing off. Antarctica turns out to be one of the best places on Earth to find meteorites. And there are two simple reasons for that. First, the cold, dry climate preserves meteorites incredibly well. A rock that fell from space 10,000 years ago can still be sitting on the ice in almost perfect condition. Second, against a background of pure white snow and ice, a dark rock from space stands out like a sore thumb. You can spot them from a distance without sophisticated equipment. Over the past 50 years, scientists have collected tens of thousands of meteorites in Antarctica. Tens of thousands. This frozen continent has given us more space rocks to study than almost any other location on Earth, and each one is a piece of our solar system's 4 billion-year history, perfectly preserved. Look, I get it. When you've got a continent that's hard to reach, hard to study, and full of genuine mysteries, people's imaginations start running wild. Every year, someone finds something on satellite images of Antarctica and decides it's proof of alien life, or an ancient civilization, or secret military bases. The Atlantis theory is particularly popular. The idea that when Antarctica was ice-free thousands of years ago, it was home to a highly advanced civilization that got wiped out when the ice age hit. Some people are completely convinced by this. Others point to the pyramid-shaped mountains visible in parts of Antarctica and suggest they're man-made structures. Spoiler, they're not. They're a completely natural geological formation called a pyramidal peak, shaped by millions of years of erosion. But they do look weirdly geometric, I'll give them that. The honest answer is that Antarctica is still so poorly understood that science hasn't been able to rule everything out yet. And that gap between what we know and what we don't, that's where the theories live. What we do know is this: Antarctica is one of the last truly wild, truly unexplored places on our planet. And the things we've already found there, the hidden lakes, the Blood Waterfall, the volcanoes, the microscopic life forms, the ancient meteorites, are strange enough that you almost don't need the conspiracy theories. The real Antarctica is already more bizarre than most people realize.